Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
That's nice to talk to you. So, how do you think you fare against the other tight ends in this draft? How do you think you fare against guys like Kyle Pitts? And what team best fits your style going into the NFL?
I think obviously this class is full of really good tight ends and different types of tight ends. I think I'm one of the few that can do all the above. I think in my time here, I've played inline, I've played in the backfield, I've played out wide, and that's something that's really helped me. And I'm thankful for that I've had the opportunity here. And man, I can fit into any system. And just based on what I just said, I've played Y, I've played H, I've played F, I've played all over the place, and that versatility I think will set me apart.
Charlie Potter, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Miller. Obviously, you're getting ready for the NFL and going through pro day, but did you give any thought about maybe returning for a 6 year, given the NCAA's blanket waiver?
Yeah, I'd thought about it, but at the end of the day, I've had my five and a half years here, and I kind of felt like it was time for me to move on. That's kind of where I was at.
Justin Felder, go ahead.
What's up, Miller? I'm with Fox 5 in Atlanta. If that long-haired quarterback had lived somewhere other than Cartersville and you kept playing quarterback in high school, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
I'm not sure I'd be preparing for the NFL draft. That's for sure. But thankfully, the long-haired quarterback from Cartersville took my job, and I moved to tight end. So I was lucky enough to have this happen.
Alex Fleming, go ahead.
How you doing today, sir? Alex Fleming, Florida Sun.
Doing just fine. How are you?
Pretty good. If you had to describe your game, comparing it to a former tight end in the league, would you be more of a Greg Olson or a Heath Miller?
I mean, I'm not sure I can call myself either of those. Those are two fantastic players that played in the league for a long time. I'm just going to try to be Miller Forristall and take bits and pieces of each of their game. And that's something I've tried to do here with the former players here, the guys that are playing in the league now. Try and take bits and pieces of each of their game, not necessarily emulate one or the other, but an amalgamation of all of them.
Tony Sakalis, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Miller. Just when you look back at what you're leaving behind at Alabama, what is the state of the tight end group, and kind of who do you see kind of breaking out this season?
I'm proud of the way I think I've left the tight end room. I spent 5 years here and tried to live up to Coach Saban's standard the best I could. And I think if you ask these younger guys, I hope I did that. I think Jaleel Billingsley and Cameron Latu and Major Tennyson and all these guys that I've been around and played with will be ready to play. And they'll all have, like I said, different parts of their game that can help contribute to the team. They all do one thing better than the other. But I think everybody thinks Jaleel's going to come out and play great, and I do too. I think Cameron Latu is going to be able to come out and help, and I think Major will be able to do the same thing. It'll be a tight end by committee deal if I had to take a wild guess. But, man, I'm proud of them, and they've all improved greatly, so I'm excited to see them this year.
Jacob Infante, go ahead.
Hey, Miller, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine and dandy.
Awesome. So obviously you being a taller guy, you're a really good athlete for the tight end position. So I wanted to ask, does being taller, does that provide some sort of obstacle in terms of being a route runner and, dropping your hips? And if so, how have you overcome that? Because on tape, I've noticed that's one of your biggest strengths.
Oh, I appreciate that. Not everyone thinks I'm athletic. That's big. No, I think there's pros and cons to everything. You get your smaller, faster guys. Irv Smith's a shorter muscle guy, but he's obviously super quick. And is a fantastic receiver and has played well in the league. I'm obviously a longer guy, so that has some pros and cons. You can gain ground on people a little differently. You can create a little bit more space, especially on contact. So I've tried to play into both of those well. Use the body, create a little bit more space here and there, something else I've been working on.
D. Orlando Ledbetter, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
There we go. Yeah, Miller, I'm from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, so I won't bring up the high school thing. But how about your inline blocking, and what is it like playing with weapons like Devontae Smith as part of that, being a part of that offensive machine you all have down there?
I mean, that was one of the reasons I came to Alabama. In recruiting, Coach Saban told me, hey, you do A, B, and C really well, but you suck at blocking. And that was one of the things I was like, you know what? That was brutally honest, and no one said that to me. And he said, come here and be the best version of yourself. And man, I think in 5 years we've come pretty darn close. And then obviously playing with, I've played with a Heisman Trophy winner. I've played with Heisman runner-ups. I've played with Heisman. I've played with the best you can play with. Outland Trophy winners and the best O-lines and the best receivers and linebackers. So the list goes on. It was a heck of an opportunity to play here, and I'm very grateful.
Can I have a quick follow-up? Have you studied Arthur Smith's offense and how he uses the tight ends at Tennessee? And then, have you talked to the Falcons?
Haven't heard from the Falcons much, and I've looked a little bit at their offense and the way they use it, but nothing in depth yet.
Matthias, go ahead.
Hi, Miller. Matheus Ornelas from Time Out Brazil. Congratulations for going for the NFL draft. You say that you have like the 5 years in Alabama and how that worked for you, like in ethic for work. And how do you think that all these years that Bama brings for the players, it's good for the NFL in training or in learning the game?
I think year in and year out, Alabama produces the most NFL-ready players. I think that's evident by the number of players in the league and their contribution. So year in and year out, Coach Saban prepares guys better than anywhere else, and that's a lot of the reason why guys come here and are so successful in the league, is the preparation they have here.
Tyler Jeffries, go ahead.
Hey, Miller, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler Jeffries from Overtime Fantasy. I just want to know, what's the one thing that you wanted to improve on in preparation for the NFL draft, and what are you going to miss most about, playing for Alabama?
One of the things I've been working on is my lower body explosion. So we've been hard getting after it in the weight room, getting ready for these combine drills and the pro day drills and just overall explosion. And I'll miss the people. I'll miss the guys, the locker room, and the friends I've made over 5 years here. That's something that I'll take with me wherever I go.
Edward Krass, go ahead.
Hey, Miller, you mentioned that Coach said 5 years ago your blocking sucked. How have you improved in there, and how much run blocking have you done in your time there?
I think if you turn on the tape from this past year, I did a lot of run blocking. That was pretty evident. And I was glad to do so in any way to help the team. I think in my 5 years here, so I've greatly improved. I've put on 35 to 35 pounds, almost 40 pounds in 5 years, and improved in so many ways. So I'm proud of how far I've come, and I've got a lot more to grow. So I'm excited.
David Miller, go ahead.
Hi, Miller. David Miller here with All About the Birds. Just quickly asking, for the people who perhaps aren't as aware of who you are, who is Miller Forristall, and what are your strengths?
As a football player, I'm a 2 to 3 year starter at the University of Alabama who will come out into the league as one of the most prepared tight ends in this draft that can be able to play the Y, the F, the H, line up all over the field, and contribute to a team in multiple ways when I step onto in the building. That's something I think I take pride in.
Phil Corella, go ahead.
Hey, Miller, this is Phil Corella from Overtime Fantasy. How you doing, man?
I could not be better.
All right. So just quickly describe, how has playing at Alabama kind of excelled your game and your competitiveness, and what has the process been like during this whole offseason?
My freshman year, I was lining up against John Allen and Ryan Anderson and Reuben Foster. My sophomore year, I was lining up against Rashawn Evans and Minkah Fitzpatrick. My junior year, I was lining up against Dylan Moses. And this past year, I lined up against Will Anderson and Dylan Moses and Christian Harris and the best players in the country year in and year out. So I think from that aspect, you don't get a better preparation. And then I stayed here to train. I think we have the best staff in the country. And I was the most comfortable with them, and I think they did awesome things for my body and helped me transform into a better player. And I was so pleased with staying here and working out with them, getting ready for pro day in the draft.
Thomas Frank Carr, go ahead.
Hey, how much do you get into the sports science side of things? Because you mentioned a couple times now lower body explosion, putting on weight, all those things. How deep do you get into that stuff, and how important is that for athletes when it comes to their production on the field?
I'd say I get into it about as any other athlete does, if not a bit more. And if you don't measure it, how do you know if you're improving at it? So I like measuring stuff now, especially with these guys. Doc and Blue have been here and been successful, so I've kind of bought into what they say and do.
Does anybody have any other questions for Miller before we let him go? All right, Miller. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Long snapper Thomas